Nope.
One of the first things I realized when I jumped into the entrepreneurship game was,
How do you manage your own fear?
I get to make my own decisions. I get to be my own boss. And then the second thing I realized was,
You have to become the person who can decide through that uncertainty.
oh crap, I have to make my own decisions. I have to be my own boss.
Yeah.
Where the mind goes.
It was cool to see us get the lights set up. I think that was the thing that surprised me the most about this was how finicky light production is.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're not like a gaffer, the fancy jargon for the person who actually runs lights on a full set. I'm not a gaffer. I love light, but I'm a student of light for sure.
Gaffer sound like the name of the court jester? Like, he's just a ripe old gaffer.
It does. It seems very British, which maybe that's where it comes from. We might have to start over.
Gaffer sounds like one of those like Shakespearean slurs,
It does. No, it does actually sound like a Shakespearean slur.
Yeah. Dude, 3 years this month you've been running your business. Congratulations.
Yeah.
How's it feel?
Weird. I think I feel like it's gone by in a flash. I still feel like a baby when it comes to running a business, an entrepreneur. But then at the same time, when I think back to 3 years ago when I started, the amount I have learned is hard to even process. And so in that way, it's almost like my brain feels like it's been forever, but my body feels like it's just fleshed.
There's just so many things that get wrapped up in this idea of the entrepreneurial mindset. And I don't think all of them are just tied to business. I think this idea that an entrepreneurial mindset is something that you can apply to your entrepreneurial journey. I think it's something that you could apply in a corporate perspective or when you're working for a business or a company or a person. I also think it's something that can be applied to your personal life as well. Having an entrepreneurial mindset to me doesn't necessarily mean how do I make money on my own. I think it means how do I identify risk effectively? How do I build resilience? How do I identify opportunities? Right? These are things that are not just stuck in business. I think they're things that if we start to realize I can take an entrepreneurial mindset and apply it to my relationships, I can apply it to my things I care about personally, right? If there's anything from a giving perspective or a charitable perspective, right? I think an entrepreneurial mindset can really help you make big leaps and move forward in a direction that is good for a lot of different things. And this idea of opportunity recognition is I think the thing that kind of got me realizing this, because I think as an entrepreneur, we have to always realize, how do we find gaps in a market, right? How do we create a product that hasn't been created yet? How do we solve solutions and get creative in ways that can solve problems in our lives or in other people's lives? I've started to apply that to my own personal life, and I've realized that's what an entrepreneurial mindset is. Is there anything that you kind of jumps out to you from an entrepreneurial mindset when it comes to opportunity recognition? And specifically, I think, which is a little bit more interesting, is this idea of opportunity recognition in terms of how to solve problems in your life using creative solutions.
Yeah, I think the way I would boil down entrepreneurship myself is somebody with vision who knows how to build the bridge from where they are now to where they're trying to get to with that vision, right? And so, again, to your point, entrepreneurship doesn't have to be in business. There's a really big buzzword right now of social entrepreneurship, right? Nonprofits or alternative types of organizations that are trying to do that, right? They're maybe not in it for the profit, but they're in it for solving societal problems, right? And so, I think when I take that concept and I think about opportunity recognition, right? It's how do I see a problem in the world that not just one, but many people are trying to figure out a good solution for, and how can I apply all of my creativity, all my resources, all of my persistence, to solving that problem as best as I possibly can for the people who need it.
You know where I'm becoming a social entrepreneur as of late?
Where?
In the Halloween party I'm planning.
Okay. All right.
This just came to mind, so let me run with this for a second. But I identified a gap in the market, and the gap was that none of my friends were having a Halloween party.
True.
Emily and I took it upon ourselves to have a Halloween party. And the first thing that we had to do was commit to actually having that. And then we had to create an event. We had to plan for the event. We had to budget. We had to purchase decorations. We had to identify who's coming. We had to send out invitations. We had to track people down. We had to essentially create a solution for this gap in the market that we found. And it required us to get creative in terms of what day are we going to have the Halloween party, right? We had to, talk to some of our close friends and see what days they were available, and, see if we could find an opportunity or a time that worked best for all of us. We had to be proactive and take initiative in order to make this happen, because there's a time sensitivity to this, right? The closer we get to Halloween, the harder it is to plan a Halloween party. We had to take some risk in terms of buying, food and stuff that we don't know if it's going to all get consumed. I don't know if we're going to buy enough drinks. I don't know if we're going to have enough food. I don't know if we're going to spend too much money on decorations, right? We had to make some calculated decisions in terms of, what is our budget? How much are we willing to spend? Should we have people bring their own food? Should we provide all the food, right? There was all of this work that we had to do to make this party happen. And it didn't occur to me until we sat down to talk about this, but this is a very entrepreneurial journey that we had to go on to create this party. And now the event hasn't happened yet. By the next time we talk, we'll be able to reminisce over the party and how well it went. But at the end of the day, what really stood out to me in planning this was I was like, oh, this is no different than a business project that I'd be working on, right? There's a scope, there's a timeline, and there's resources. And how do we execute, making sure that that triangle of things are not getting too pulled in one direction.
I love this. I love this as a simple metaphor, right? That you can pull out a lot of things. But how would you take that and apply it to your own business? What are the things that maybe you've done well planning this Halloween party that you struggle with in your own business, and how can you bridge that?
I struggle with lack of deadlines and guidelines. When a project that I want to work on doesn't have an end date, it's very hard for me to start. And I've noticed that because Emily and I love hosting, and it's something that we're really good at, but it's stressful. What it requires is a timeline that I have to execute against, that if I don't, other people will be let down. And you don't get that a lot in business. I think one of the biggest challenges that I've had as an entrepreneur, and when I try to think about what an entrepreneurial mindset means, is this idea that everyone wants autonomy, right? Everyone wants to be able to do what they want when they want it. It sounds like, especially when you're used to being told what to do and when to do it, it sounds like this golden ticket. But I always like to say one of the first things I realized when I jumped into the entrepreneurship game was, ooh, I get to make my own decisions. I get to be my own boss. And then the second thing I realized was, oh crap, I have to make my own decisions. I have to be my own boss.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that I didn't realize coming into entrepreneurship was that there's a double-edged sword when it comes to autonomy. For me, I struggle with deadlines. Having a party is a great example of how I have to move and execute against the deadline, because the party is, once I set the date, the party is happening. People are showing up at 7:00, whether I have decorations, food, everything.
Yeah, the train
ready
has
or
left
not.
the station. It's happening.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's motivating, right? Yesterday we set up decorations. Today we're making sure our costumes are good to go. We're going to go get some food for everything, so it's sitting in the fridge, right? I'm executing against this plan, but it all started with a deadline. And the thing that I can take away from this and apply to my business is that I need more deadlines. And I need them to be objective deadlines. I'm very good at rationalizing why I can move a date out and back and forth. I need to have something set in stone, and then once I do, I can backwards plan against it very effectively. But one of the biggest challenges, and I think one of the things that people don't realize getting into entrepreneurship, is that not only is the work still has to get done, but no one is telling you what work to do and how it has to get done.
Yeah.
The creativity there is all up to you.
You're sparking something for me around, and I think this is one of the core, most beautiful and terrifying parts about being an entrepreneur, which is managing the unknown, right? To your point, no one is putting any deadlines on you. There's no right way to be an entrepreneur. There's a million ways you could do it that would work, and there's 2 billion ways you could do it that won't, right? And so you have to become the person who can decide and manage through that uncertainty and that unknown. And some of that is managing risks and knowing when to take calculated risks, right? Or for some, maybe uncalculated risks that do or do not pull off for them. But I think a lot of it is just how do you manage your own fear?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that first thing that was the biggest barrier for me as an entrepreneur was getting over my beliefs about sales and marketing. The second thing for me is how to work towards that vision when I am not getting the results at the pace that I want them to be. One of my favorite quotes is from Alex Hormozy that talks about entrepreneurship. And he just says, just don't stop, right? Just keep going. Never give yourself an excuse to not keep trying. And I don't know, there's nothing eloquent in those words. Other entrepreneurs have said it 1,000 different ways, but for some reason, the way he said it is what I've been holding on to, which is as an entrepreneur, you have to suspend for an unknown amount of time this walk between where you are now and the seed that you have and the realization of that vision, right?
It's one of the hardest things I've struggled with as well, especially coming from a corporate mindset. In the corporate world, there's almost like this path that you can choose to follow if you want to, right? You come in, you're, a new person and fresh out of college, and you work 3 years at this job that you're in so you can get promoted into a higher level role. And then you work another 3 to 5 years so that you can get promoted to a senior level. And then you eventually can work up, another 3 to 5 years to be a manager, and then a director, a VP, a president of a business, and then eventually a CEO in 30 years, right? There's a plan laid out. How exactly you get there is a little vague, or more importantly, it's up to you to kind of define what that timeline looks like. But there's a very, there's always a clear stepping stone of what comes next, right? And even if it's not up, there's a stepping stone sideways, or there's a path that gets created. There's only a certain amount of avenues you can go from the position you're in. And that's just not the case in entrepreneurship. Not only do you not know which path to go down, but you also don't know if this path leads to anything, if this path will take you forwards, backwards, sideways, into a different dimension. I mean, it's scary. And I think the thing that I didn't realize coming into this entrepreneurial mindset is that everything you want is going to take longer than you think. And that realization is both empowering and scary as shit.
Yeah. Especially to your point where you don't know if the avenue you're on is actually just a dead end. And it might take you 2 years to even know that. I'm on that right now as a business where for the last, 3 years, I've slowly refined into this idea of I want to create video production services and communication strategy for nonprofit and for-profit organizations, but mostly nonprofits in the sustainability and equity space. I don't know for sure if there's enough of a market there and a demand for that, right?
But there's only one way to find out.
There's only one way to find out. I mean, and there's market research you can do, and I've done some of that. But you also just don't know, especially when most, if not, I think 95% of my clients are nonprofits right now. And when I was starting, I was like, a lot of people were like, there's not enough money. Nonprofits don't have money for premium video production services. How do you sell that, right? And, I've had moments of finding those ideal clients, but I still have been asking myself, is this really going to go to the scale that I hope, right? And I'm still finding that out. I'm still on that path, and I'm finding actually lately that I actually do think there is. But that's literally within the last month that I'm starting to go, okay, I'm starting to unlock some of these doors. But it's taken me 3 years to get to the point where I feel like I'm starting to see the edges of the answers to that question.
This is so cool. I didn't even think I would. I didn't know if I'd go here or not, or didn't even know I could go here. But there's a tangent to what you just said, and this idea of relationships.
Okay.
When you start a new relationship, you have no clue where it's going to go.
Okay. Yeah. I
right?
like this. Okay.
It's exciting. It's new. It's fresh. It's fun, but it's also a little scary. And it's easy until the first time it gets hard. And then you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is going to require more work than I thought.
Yeah.
And then you push through that and you get through that problem. And then another problem immediately comes up, right? whether, and let's maybe use this from a relationship perspective of you and a significant other, right? You're dating, it's, you're in that honeymoon phase, and it's just fun. You're having fun, and then you learn something about someone, whether it's, something about their personal life or in their past or just how they live or how they do. And you're like, ooh, I didn't expect that. That's different, right? I'm going to have to go figure this out and solve this problem, whether it's I had to change my perspective on things, or I have to have a hard conversation with someone. And then you get past that, and then you eventually cover a new problem. But what ends up happening is you go, I don't know how long I'm going to be in this. I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want this to be the last and most successful thing I ever do, but I don't know that until I put in the work. And you have to invest in this work and do all this work in order to understand if I'm actually moving in the right direction or not. Is this a viable product, for lack of a better term? And it's very similar to how entrepreneurship is, right? You have this idea, it's new, it's fun, you're creating, there's this sense of purpose and fulfillment, which again, you can get from relationships as well. But then it becomes challenging. And then why most people don't succeed in entrepreneurship is because they don't have the ability to just not stop. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, and Emily and I have talked about this. We just celebrated 10 years together, 4 years married.
Nice.
And we talked about it. I was like, what's kept us together this long? And it's the fact that when things got hard and when we both wanted to quit, we committed to ourselves that we just wouldn't stop. It's the same thing with entrepreneurship.
I mean, I think that is really powerful. Let me start again. That's really powerful. I love that, because there is for sure an element of just marching into the unknown in a relationship. You do not know where that will end. You have hopes, you have vision, right? But you don't know. And I mean, almost always, anyone I've ever talked to that's been in a successful long-term relationship, it never looks like the way they envisioned it when they started. It always evolves. And the reality, even if it's beautiful and hopefully more beautiful than they could have imagined, is still not the way they thought of it in the beginning. And I think that is exactly the same as running a business. You have these aspirations, these visions of how it will look, and then you get into it and you just don't stop. And eventually you realize, if I go up the mountain this way, I can actually get to the top, whereas the other part was frozen, and then you get up to the top and you're like, well, I'm not really on the peak, but I'm actually at a more beautiful view of the sunset. And you know what? That's my peak, and I think that's been true in my own business I thought I was going to create, really cool, fast-paced, edited, sexy videos when I started. Like, that's what I was interested in. And I thought I was going to be more of a general video production type of company. And I had these aspirations of, one day doing like kind of documentary style work, but I thought I'd have to work for the next 10, 15 years to do that. And then I wasn't getting work. And then I pivoted it into doing what I actually wanted to do and was like, well, I might as well just try selling the thing that I'm most passionate about and see how that goes. And I had more success. I don't know. So you just don't know, right? And so I almost think when you come back to this idea of what does it mean to hold the entrepreneurial mindset, I think it's a combination of having curiosity and essentially being an explorer and willing to explore and find dead ends and then keep going, right? And having that grit. But
Resilience.
I think resilience.
I love that word.
Everybody loves that word. Yeah, it's a hot word right now. But it's true. It is. It's having that resilience in that space and acknowledging that there are going to be days when you kind of give up for the day, but then tomorrow you don't, you get back up and you try something different. How do you want to manage the unknown differently in your business going forward?
I think the first thing to understand is that there's a difference between known unknowns and unknown unknowns. A known unknown is a potential problem with your camera that can come up. That can happen, right? Another unknown unknown would be struggles getting approval from certain entities that you need to be approved in order to be able to get a product to market or something like that, right? There's known challenges that we're going to face. Unknown unknowns are the things that we have no clue could happen, right? It's the catastrophic event, the natural disaster, the God forbid losing someone important to you. It's the this the SEC shut down this part of my business and therefore I can't do right. It's these things that you just couldn't ever fathom and can't really plan for. And there's really nothing you can do about those until they happen, right? I think knowing how to control the known unknowns, having backup plans, having systems, having SOPs, having an if this then that scenario that can happen that you're planning for is a lot different than something you can't plan for. And for me, it's just I got to get better at planning for the things that I know could happen, right? The fact that a client could reach out and tell me they have to take a break and now all of a sudden I'm out hundreds of dollars a month. It's a piece of equipment breaking down and I'm having to now have to find alternative solutions or pay for another piece of equipment. It's the challenge of growing on social media and knowing that it's going to take time, whether I like it or not, right? Those are things that I just need to plan for and then practice more patience with. It's the unknown unknowns that I think people spend more time worrying about, and it's almost worthless because there's nothing you can do until they happen. So don't worry about them, right? Control what you can control, and the rest of it will take care of itself. And until something happens that you can take control and ownership of, let's try not to make it a big deal.
Where the mind goes.